Hi, I'm Logan Cook with Envision Property Management Services. We're here at another house. I'm with my buddy Gerald Boyd. He's going to help me behind the camera. He might interject a little on occasion to keep me on track. Wanted to introduce you to this house behind me. This is a duplex, so it's a little different from the house that we had seen in previous video. Also, another difference in this property is that it's on a crawl space, so to kind of give you an idea of the different types of foundations that are available, and also some of the issues that can arise with having a crawl space or a basement. All right, if you take a look behind me, you have a unit on this side, on the right-hand side, and a unit on the left-hand side, and they mirror each other. There's 2 bedrooms, 2 baths in each unit. It's a great investment strategy to have a duplex. All the utilities are paid for by the tenants, which is super important. Anytime considering a multifamily unit, you want to make sure they're separately metered. What I mean is power and gas. We don't want to have any time where you would have tenants having to split their bills. So as we go around the house, you'll get an idea of the different meters, so everybody gets their own bills. One thing to point out is the roof on this house. There is no apparent leaks on the interior of the property, so it is doing its job. But as you can see, it's at the end of its life expectancy. You see the discoloration on there. That's where the asphalt grit has been washed off of the property. If you'll notice over to the right at the chimney, there's been a patch. So I would not advise for the owner to replace it at this point, because we don't have any leaks, but it's something that he needs to consider to budget for the future. A roof like this, you're looking at approximately $5,000 to replace it, and so it's definitely something that will definitely need to be addressed in the near future. All right, let's take a look around the house. We recently cut the grass. This is what's called a stone facade. It's just like vinyl siding or anything else. There's no structural value to this. This is just for looks. As you can see here as we come around the house, an example, the main floor of the house is right here at this line, and this is what's called a cinder block wall. And this is, you have these cinder blocks about this size built upon each other to create a foundation that the wood floor joists are installed on. So the great opportunity is to take a look at a crawl space. Now, crawl spaces don't necessarily add value to a property on a resale for resale, but it does add cost to building a property. So there's typically less margin when you're building a property with a crawl space as opposed to a slab. Now, a basement is a different story, because people like basements for purposes of either storage or additional living space or room to grow in the future. Right here you see the gas meter. This is gas from the street. It's natural gas. This is how the house will typically heat with a gas hot water heater and a gas heater or a furnace with forced air. So it's piped in right here, and that means you can have a person can have a gas stove as well. One thing too, right here, this is called this is a siding. This siding here is, if it's treated well, it lasts a long time. It's very hardy, and it's good for insulation. But as you can see, over time, as water gets on it, it tends to swell, and then you have where the nails were pulled in, they sink inside of the product, which causes water to get inside, and water is the biggest enemy of this type of siding. What this called, it's called pressboard siding. It eluded me for a minute, but what they do is they take wood shavings and glue, and they glue this together. A correct installation of this would be to prime all sides of the siding when you install it, because like I said before, water is the worst enemy of this type of siding. This property has been recently painted as you can see, and there's examples of some partial replacements around the property. Another thing here, this is a little side note when you have your tenants, doing yard work around your property, because typically tenants are in charge of their own lawn maintenance. As you can see right here, we have some poison ivy. Now, poison ivy is very prevalent in Georgia, poison ivy and poison sumac, and that will give you some serious blisters. So that would be something that I would have the contractor remove, as to not allowing your tenant to get that on themselves. So it might prohibit them from wanting to do yard work. So we don't want that to happen. Also, the downspouts are trying to divert water from the property. Gutters and water control is very important, especially when you're dealing with a block foundation or a crawl space foundation. I believe that this is the wrong type of drainage pipe for downspout because of the holes. Really, you want this to carry water away from the foundation. Right now, it's dumping right along the foundation, and when we go inside the crawl space, you'll see why it's so important to manage the water. And this is the big no-no. You never ever want any type of wood touching your foundation, because over time it rots and it just attracts bugs, and it attracts the worst kind of bug for your property, which is termites. So as you can see right now, there's no termites here, but there are a lot of bugs that have accumulated because of the wood to earth contract just stays wet. So we'll remove this wood from the foundation to preserve the property from termites. Okay, typically you have, these are vents for the crawl space. You want your crawl space to be vented so the moisture can come out, so we get a nice breeze in there, and that's typical. You got your power meter, and each property has a power meter on each side, so everybody pays their own bill, which is very important. This is your telephone network interface, and this is your cable. And the cable is run underground, and that's typically where people get their internet and television. Also, right there's a dish right there that's installed. It's properly installed based on our rules. We don't. A lot of times we'll mount those to the roof, and which typically can cause future leaks. So it's important that you try to get your tenants not to improperly install the satellite dishes on the property. All right. So again, here we have the condensing unit. Now, this is the exterior unit that works with the HVAC system, and it has a fan that cools. It has Freon in it that creates a cooling system. Of course, with the electric and the copper pipes coming out of it. Now, one thing that's very important is to have this properly insulated. As you can see, this is a copper pipe. Now, whenever we have vandalism or theft, outside of appliances, the appliances is the number one theft. Number two is copper. Now, they can steal copper out of this. A person can steal copper out of this and get $35 at a scrapyard, which it would cost the owner hundreds of dollars to have it fixed. So it's just a horrible situation when people are stealing the copper on the property. So that's why it's important to have low vacancy rates, low vacancy times, get these things turned and get them rented and get tenants in there as soon as possible. Here's another issue that we're having on this property. As you can see, there's a hole. And anytime you have a hole like this, we'll see that somebody's run cable into this hole. And this is coming from the HVAC, so it has a drain for it. But we've got to secure this because cats and rodents and bugs can enter the property through this hole. So that is one thing that will be addressed. And usually, if you're going to find a lot of damage on your pressboard siding, a lot of times it's near the ground because you got the rain washing up on it. But here's an example of how the pressboard siding will swell over time because of water. See, even right here, it's bowing out. Eventually, these will have to be replaced. All right, moving along to the back of the house. We have a wood structured deck. Overall, it's in good shape, with exception of this post right here. As you can see, it's going down into the ground. That's called wood to earth contact. And because of that, it is compromised. It's actually rotting down there at the bottom. So what probably have the contractors do is replace this post and place another post there inside of a concrete footer, just to support this stairwell. The stairwell is very heavy.
Similar to that one there. That one's
exactly. This is the way it should have been installed. As you can see, it's this is what's called a concrete footer. This is a 4x4 post, and that we will be going back with a 4x4 post here. But overall, it's the deck is not in poor shape. But we'll have to have a licensed contractor look at it and give his opinion. Okay, so I'm kind of excited to show you guys a crawl space, a typical crawl space, and some of the issues that could come out from arise because of a crawl space. It's just a little different than a slab. Okay, we're here in the crawl space, so due to poor lighting, we're just going to kind of walk the property. I want to show some issues that have come up with it, and I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. So down here at the bottom, this is what the cinder block looks like. And of course, you got the frame, the wood frame, built up for the walls and the supports. And then, if you can see on the inside, the floor joist, there's been a previous repair, and I don't believe that they had resolved the issue.
one thing I want to bring up too, the dryer vent there.
Yes.
That's something you definitely want to be able to make sure that's exported outside the house, because that could actually be a fire hazard.
Exactly. And as you can see, they have it actually where there's holes and it's access, so we don't want pests to be able to go in and out of that as well. And it looks like it was previously vented right here. Yeah. And then when they did some repairs, they did not vent it out again. We will definitely have it vented out of the house, low to the ground, so it's easy for people to clean the vent on the outside. So one thing here is one of the main benefits that people feel if you have someone who really wants a crawl space is the fact that they have access to all of the piping. On a concrete slab foundation, these pipes are actually poured into the concrete slab. So if you were to ever have a leak, a crack in one of these, that you would have to actually burst out the concrete, which could be very expensive. Now the concrete does protect the piping, but it can happen. So this is the inside of the repair that I'd mentioned before. On the outside, so we'll put a new backing here and replace the siding and mitigate the intrusions here, make them a lot smaller and actually seal them up. And this is the condensate line pipe that I was mentioned before about having it insulated properly. As you can see, there's moisture on it because it sweats. And that runs to the HVAC system. So we have support beams, and this is just a good example of a crawl space. Okay. Um, Earlier I had mentioned about this pressboard siding. Looks like they have done some replacement here. The old siding is looks like it's in good shape. They came through and then they replaced this. So this is the new product, and this is the old product. It doesn't match exactly. This siding is probably 10 to 15 years old. Um, Small concerns would be is how they've secured it to the other property, because you don't want nails going in like that. See how there you don't see nails at the bottom of this newly installed siding. That would help with penetration of water. You never want water to be able to go in and swell up in an area, but because that means that you just have to address it at a later time. Watch your step here.
All right.
So we're up here on the deck, and this is another example. If rain gets in, it gets into these holes and it causes it to swell. It's very similar to like a pressboard siding table or furniture that people have. You definitely don't ever want to expose it to water. As you can see, the gutters cannot do their job. So the water is just coming straight down onto the deck. Probably much more than it needs to. And maybe getting in behind this threshold. So I would certainly suggest not only replacing all the gutters, but also having them do extensions to properly manage the water away from the foundation. So another thing is light bulbs, everybody. You know, they have to have them. We have to have light bulbs, and they're not inexpensive. They're easy to replace, but it is a cost of renovation, unfortunately. This unit was sold to the owner with a tenant in place, so they already had a tenant when they purchased it on one side of the property. One thing that we're having issues with this property when I initially looked at it is German cockroaches. German cockroach is a very small cockroach, and they breed very, very fast. They're hard to get rid of because they can hide in small places. Usually remediation for German cockroaches is a long process. It takes the pest control company several trips to come out. Because they're so elusive. Like I said, they have a short sexual cycle. They become sexually mature very young, and they breed very, very fast. One of the things that I've noticed in this property with observation is that there's not a trash can here. And if you want to take a look on the deck across the way there, that they're have not been taking their trash out away from the property. That's just going to invite rodents and bugs. So what we would do in a situation like this, we would let them know that they would have to have trash as part of their agreement, that they have trash service at the property. And also, we cannot treat one side and not treat the other, because if we treat this side, all the roaches will go to the other side, and they will increase their infestation. And over time, they'll just come back. What we want to do is make sure that we treat it all at one time and get them completely out of the house, and then get rid of their food sources. So another issue in Georgia that arises are mosquitoes. You never want standing water on your property. So as you can see inside of this water, there are mosquito larvae. And I don't know how things are where you are, but it's very frustrating. See, I've already been bit several times here by mosquitoes, and they can be so not fun. So you never want to have this situation, because mosquitoes can carry disease. So you never want to have standing water on your property at any time. So they've had issues before with water management. They've tried to do it But as you can see, these pipes are full of mud, and there's no way that that's going to properly drain because it's going down, it's broken. That's why you see a lot of those water that continues to stand in the back behind their deck. So this is a great time to mitigate that when you need gutters. So I had pointing out the condensation unit on the other side. So each side has their own heat and air systems. They also have their own meter. This unit is looks to be brand new. It's a Goodman, which is at your entry level type. It has a good life expectancy, good quality. Definitely your kind of your middle of the road, but good quality AC system. Telephone, just like it on the other side. Gas meter, just like on the other side. And again, we have some wood earth here that would have to be removed from the property. See, okay, here are termites. Sorry, you see these little guys. They're very fragile. They there's one right there, and they eat the wood, especially wet wood. Oh my gosh, we got a wasp just landed on us. See how they're doing the tunnels here? They are very light sensitive. They like it to be damp. They like the wood to be damp so they can eat it, but they can destroy a house. They can eat your studs. They can eat your all the boards in your house. It's so important to mitigate these things. So this house definitely needs to be treated for termites. So we're looking at the siding. On occasion we run across this when we're intaking a property. We did not renovate this property. This property came to us already, painted. But what I've noticed is nothing on this side has been painted. They've done some touch-ups here, like around the cracks, but this siding still has the old paint on it. As you can see, it's a little bit compromised right here with the holes where water can get in. Somebody's come in and put a new nail in right there, which is not a proper way to secure this siding. It's just going to cause problems down the road. Unfortunately, a lot of times our investors are not local and they don't know. They have no idea that they bought a property that was painted on 3 sides and not all the way around. But this definitely needs to be painted because if it's properly painted, it'll last much longer. Unfortunately, a lot of times people neglect painting these properties, and usually you should be painted around every 5 years. Here's an example of a nail hole that has gone too far. As you can see, when I press on it, this board needs to be replaced eventually. And they did a little patch job here underneath these windows. Obviously water was coming into the windows and getting behind here, so these two were probably very similar to this one here. Also, they've replaced the water spigots. These are brand new. Another drain to try to mitigate water. That's why the gutter systems are so important, to keep water from dumping on the front of the property. So this is their drain system. It's been here for a long time. It needs to be replaced. Because this right here is catching all the water coming off that entire front of the roof. That's a lot of water for one downspout. The water, as you can see, is very wet right here. If you look here, it's very, very wet because water's not being properly managed off the front of the house. So let's take a look inside. Okay, we're in the interior of the property. There's not much to show in here. It's a little over 1,000 square foot here, 2 bedrooms, 2 full baths. And one thing I wanted to point out initially is that if you take a look at the walls, the painters have already primed the walls. That's a primer / stain blocker. affecting the cost of the paint job. Anytime you have to do several coats, it drives up the cost. A lot of times, if it's not an offensive color, then we will just match the color and paint it and do a one-coat painting. But unfortunately, as you can see, it was a lime green, and you just don't really want that for a new turnover. If you're going to paint it anyways, it's better to go back to a neutral paint. And that's what we'll be doing in here. Every single piece of sheetrock and ceiling, trim, and doors will be repainted in this property. While we're here, I'd like to point out these windows. Now, most of these windows, they're made as a double pane window. When you have a double pane window, it has a gas in between, and it helps with the heating cost. As you can see inside this window, that is in between the panes. You can't wash that. That's what happens when the seal on it gets compromised, and it does affect the rating of it. Also here, as you can see again, it's got all this film on the inside of it. Eventually, it will need to be replaced. I don't necessarily think that it's something that would need to be replaced to place a tenant, because we'll have blinds here. It'll look nice, but it's something definitely that need to be budgeted for. Especially those types of items usually come up in inspections on resale. So if we go for a resale on the property. Here's another example of extreme colors. We're going to go back with a neutral color on the fireplace all the way up. The ceilings, as you can see how dirty they are, that there are several patches in the ceiling as well. So we're going to go ahead and go with a clean slate. You can't necessarily clean a ceiling. We could broom it, but a lot of times these webs are so sticky they just ball up and they just won't go away. So if you want a nice, fresh, clean feel when you walk into the house, it's definitely better to go ahead and paint the entire ceilings. Again, this is a fireplace. Looks like the fire brick is in very poor condition. This would have to be addressed. We would probably either board this fireplace up so it can't be used, or it's going to have to be replaced. This is what's called an insert. This is a fire brick, and over time it definitely erodes. I mean, it usually lasts a very long time, but it's definitely time. So this piece would come out, this piece would come out, this piece would come out. It's like a kit, and we'd have to evaluate the bottom as well. It looks like it's at its end, but of course you would have this is where you sit your wood, but this is what's called a starter, and it's attached to the gas. So a little bit of gas would come out here. I'm not sure where the starter key is. It's probably underneath some of this stuff here. Excuse me. Right here. You'd have a little square key. Look here. There's one of those little cockroaches, got a little paint on it. One of the German cockroaches that I had mentioned earlier. You do not want these. They breed so fast. They're so nasty. They poop everywhere. They live behind the walls, and it's a sanitary issue and it's a health issue. Sorry for the side note, but back to this. So you would turn on this. You would have your wood, let it get started. With the little bit of gas fire, and then you would just turn it off just to get the wood started. Another option is to take this out, and they have kits where they're metal logs that look like wood and have these ashes that look like ashes, and then you turn it on, and when you're done, you just turn it off. So also, this is where the flue opens and closes. So when you open your flue, it allows air to come out, so the smoke doesn't come back into your property, out the chimney. And then when the fire is completely out, you would close your flue. This is something I did not notice on my initial inspection. It was definitely something that has to be addressed. And see, even this metal covering needs to be replaced as well. All right. As I said, everything's going to be painted. Here's another example of a very extreme color. not necessarily against yellow, but this is a very, very bright yellow. Most tenants are not going to want this in their house. So we've already started priming it and everything. Now this is a little kitchen here, and they have a laundry room off the kitchen. And if you recall, when we were in the crawl space, this is the vent that was mentioned for the dryer, and this is a gas line. If you have a gas dryer, most people do not have gas dryers anymore. Very unlikely anybody's going to want that. So we would definitely get this all cleaned up to where nothing can get in and out of it, and make it more secure and vent it outside the house, as we mentioned before. So also too, these kits here, we always monitor these and make sure there's no leaks here. They have, this is your hot and cold water for your washer and dryer, and then there's a dryer drain right there in the middle where it drains out. Also here, when you evaluate your appliances, a vent hood like this is not super expensive or difficult to change. There's a lot of grease on it. There's a lot of just filth. A lot of times a buildup of oil and grease from cooking will it becomes roach food, and they can eat on it for decades. So that was one thing that I would definitely suggest replacing. This is your typical gas stove. I don't know if the gas is on. Gas is not on to it right now, but it's just yeah, let's turn it on. You know, this is set up for gas and to cook with gas. We have your oven and you have your cooktop here. Typical appliance package to include vent hood, dishwasher, stove. It's probably around $1,500, so it's not a tremendous expense, but they do have to be replaced on occasion. All right. One good thing here and here, they did install tile. That tile should be very durable and should last a long time, and it's properly installed. All right. So we have some of the mechanicals here that I can show you. This is the electrical panel. It's run from the outside of the house through the crawl space up into the bottom. So these are your breakers. So if you could turn them on and off, all of them in the on position right now. You know, your bigger stuff like your AC units and your HVAC will be here, and then your dryer, washer and dryer, they require larger breakers. Typically these are like outlets and lights throughout the house. So if ever there was a power surge, they're made to trip, and then you just flip them back over. And over here, be careful, the walls have the primer on it. The primer is a little bit oily and sticky. It's because it had a full coverage. But here's the furnace. It's Goodman to match the outside unit. It is gas. You see the gas comes up through the crawl space into here. They put this little dog leg on it to catch any soot that might come, so the soot would drive here instead of going into the unit, and it goes right up through into the unit. So this is a gas furnace, so you have to have it vented. This is a vent that vents out through the roof. So this would go out through your roof, which you'd have to monitor to make sure that there are no, that the boots are in good shape, so it vents out properly and the water's getting in. Here we are again with the insulation. It's poorly insulated. This all needs to be replaced. But this is a copper pipe. Copper is valuable, and a lot of thieves like to steal it on properties. Our property theft on copper has gone down considerably since some law changes with regards to accepting this type of stuff. So the main source of copper would be your water lines and your HVAC condensate line like this one. And then also even the wiring in the walls will have a little bit of copper in it. The expense of replacing the copper is tremendous. It could be, $1,000 to $3,000, but the value that they get is minimal. A house like this, if they were to steal all the copper, they might get $50 or $35 at maximum. It's a shame. It's tragic that they would do that for such a small amount of money and it costs somebody else so much money. So here we have, you got paint on me? Here we have the hot water heater. Now this is a gas hot water heater. Anytime you see this type of flue at the top, it also vents out of the property through the roof. So you have your waters coming in, you have a relief valve, so if pressure ever builds up inside of this, it would relieve itself outside of the property. This is where the gas line comes in, and this is where you would change and adjust your temperature and turn it on and off. So this bedroom here would probably be the primary bedroom because it has a bathroom right off of it in it. So typically this would be like the parents' room. It's a little crowded in here. As you look around, you'll see that we've primed all the doors and the closet doors. The closet doors some of them were painted red, some of them had stain on them. It's important when you paint anything with stain on it that you properly prime it, and that's what we're doing here right now. If we were to go directly over this with paint, you would probably have to paint it at least 4 times just to cover the color, if not more. This cuts down on that. This cuts down on the amount of paint that we have to use. So I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to see in here. This is the bathroom. It's got a shower tub. I always try to replace those shower heads whenever we have a fancy shower head such as that. They never work properly after time. They have soot on the inside of them, so it's just nice. It's not an expensive fix, but a simple shower head, from your Lowe's and Home Depot could go a long way to keep water from splashing everywhere. Because a lot of times these tights where they're adjustable, they'll end up spraying weird, and then you'll have water going over the sides of your tub when they're bathing, and it just causes a problem. You could have serious issues with water just from people taking a shower and not having it properly, managed. So as you can see, it's a fairly small bath, but it's a nice bath for someone. It's nice to have 2 full baths and not have a shared bath. Sometimes on your duplexes, they'll have to share a bath, and this is a great situation where you don't have to do that. It's great for maybe a small family. So we have this right here is a vent. This is a toilet vent. It's required in Georgia construction. This just vents out the air in here, and it usually goes out of the property. And then we have a register here for air conditioning inside of this, inside of here. I know that we've talked to the owner with regards to this sink. As you can see, it's cracked, and it's cracked all the way around. So we will be replacing this sink, and it's just necessary to avoid water, because you never want small leaks on in a property. It causes long-term issues. So let's take a look underneath here and see. I'm not sure. It looks like it's not currently leaking, but it's something that you always want to try. I always try to look underneath here. Now, what you see here, this is called a P-trap, and that's the way to properly run a water line out of the house. This P-trap catches any soot and stuff like that. So every once in a while you're going to need to clean this little P-trap out. A lot of times they'll catch hair and different things like that. And you have your shut-offs for your sinks. Step out of here. Okay, now we have the hall bath. The hall bath is a little bit bigger. A lot of times we're just going to be sharing this with the guests and company, so so it's a little bit longer. Some things to look at here. We're going to need some light bulbs. That's a cost. That's something that has to be done. We would put in nice round bulbs that go as more of a display bulb. I did notice here that there's some damage underneath this. This flooring would have to be replaced. I'm not sure what caused that. If someone was hiding something under there, or if some sort of rodent possibly in the past. I have seen no indication of any rodents currently. This sink as well will have to be replaced, as you can see with the crack. You can see the mirrors will eventually need to be replaced. It's a possibility we could put a small piece of trim on the bottom and trim it all the way around just to dress it up, but it is something that will be addressed down the road. This room was painted yellow as well, so we got the primer going on here. It's going to take a couple of coats of paint even with the primer, unfortunately. Okay, so this is your standard toilet. Looks like this one has been recently replaced. I just like to show people kind of, if they ever wonder why, what they had to do to fix it. This is your standard flushing system, and there's a right down there is a flush valve. That valve comes up when you flush. As well, we'll go ahead and take a look. See, the valve floats as the water retreats, flushing water through there, and then it fills up. Fills up going through this pipe down out up into the tank. So the tank always holds water. This, as the water rises, this little floater rises up until it gets to a certain point and it shuts it off. So a lot of times we will replace these because you don't want little leaks. Even a tiny leak in a toilet can cost hundreds of dollars over time. It does make a huge impact in water bills. And that's so important to manage utility bills for your tenants. You want their utilities bill as low as possible because it can be burdensome and taxing. A lot of renters have never owned a home before and don't know how to do these little things. They may hear a toilet leaking and not even think it's a bad thing. They may think it's normal. So it's a good thing to consider. It's not an inexpensive fix, but it's an important fix. So again, this is just that's a fiberglass tub. So it's made out of fiberglass. This is your very standard tub. You ever hope you never have it to be painted. One thing here is missing is the drain stop, and that would be something that we would replace because if a tenant would like to take a bath, they should be able to take a bath. And then of course you have another shower head here. Now this is an example of the type of shower heads that we typically go with. It's just simple, and the stream is controlled. There's not a lot of fancy adjustments with it. We would definitely replace this because as you see over time the water has created a soot, and the soot also gets inside of each of these, so you'll have inconsistent water coming out of them. And so it's, when we put a new one on, it should last 3 to 5 years without having replacement. And here is the second bedroom, and it is very standard, very similar to the other one. Has a ceiling fan like the other one. We've got these doors primed to be painted. Unfortunately, the carpets in here would most likely need to be replaced. A lot of these stains I don't believe will be able to come up, which is a fairly inexpensive expense here. So, all right, well, maybe in the next episode we'll try to get up in some attics for you and kind of give you an idea of insulation. And a lot of times HVAC systems are stored in the attic. And so I think that's it for the day. Okay, this house is a duplex, and one thing to consider when you're purchasing multifamily, typically you want to try to own the entire unit. I looked this up on the tax records, and it looks like the properties are individually deeded. That means that there's a line in between the house, and there's potential for someone to own one side and another person to own the other side. The only problem with that is if you ever have to replace the roof, you have to get the other investor to approve of getting their side done. There are perfect examples throughout this neighborhood where you'll see where they've owned by separate owners, and half the roof is replaced and half the roof is not replaced. So that's really important to know what you're getting. Another issue is, as far as what I've mentioned earlier, is the cockroaches. If you don't own both sides and you're treating your side, it's just a matter of time before they come back. So there's a lot to think about when you're thinking about buying multifamily. There's a lot of benefit of buying multifamily. I think value per square foot goes up when you're buying a multifamily, but there's a couple of pitfalls as well if you don't own both sides.